Welcome to the Other 98% podcast, a podcast series to shine a light on the arm wrestling community as a whole. From the new pullers to the pros and veterans, everyone is, will be, or has been a part of the Other 98% at some point in their arm wrestling career. No matter where you are in your journey, join the Other 98% community. Be sure to like, share, and subscribe if you want to see more. Welcome to the Other 98% Arm Wrestling Podcast. I'm here tonight with my co-host, Josh Vinacourt, and we are interviewing a very special guest, Kalyn Bryan. Welcome to our little podcast.
Thank you. Super excited to be here.
Yeah, thanks for coming on. We appreciate it. So before we get into our serious questions, we have a little game we like to play called Two Truths and a Lie. So if you could give us two truths and a lie, we will try to guess which one is the lie.
All right.
What do you got?
I have been chased by an ostrich. I've been to Greece, and my best squat PR was 405.
I know the lie on this one.
Shut up, Josh.
Well, go ahead, Josh. What's your guess?
Greece.
Well,
She's never been to Greece.
I'm gonna go with the same thing because he knows you better. Was he correct?
He was correct. Yeah, my best squat was 405.
Nice.
And then my best bench was 215. And I have been chased by an ostrich. I was actually in veterinary school, so I was a veterinary intern at Six Flags Great Adventure in Jersey. So I got to work with anything and everything and did sea turtle research and all that stuff. It was a blast.
Yeah, that sounded believable.
Yes. Being chased by a 6 foot big ass bird. It's pretty terrifying. I would not recommend.
I bet.
Yeah.
And the next one is our questions and conversations with which Josh is going to take care of that section.
Yeah. So, Kalyn, so what I really want to start with is the beginnings of Team New Jersey and Jim and everything, how it all tied in together and the history and the story, because I think it's really important for everyone to hear, this team's a legacy team and we have a lot going on. So take it over. Tell us.
I would love to, especially with people who have no idea what the hell they're talking about. I would love to be able to kind of put the story straight, the history of this team, and kind of what it means to be a part of Team New Jersey. So I get to have a really cool perspective, right? So I'm 23 years old. I literally have been a part of arm wrestling my whole life. I'm not saying that with any cliche or anything. My dad always said it was in my blood. I remember being in, the babies, they'll be in like a jolly jumper thing that you hook up somewhere and they'll be bouncing around. That was literally me hooked in our basement, listening to Linkin Park at like a year old.
That's awesome.
Every Tuesday, every Thursday, every Sunday. So, listen, my dad, real quick about him, arm wrestling wasn't his job. He loved it. It was his passion, but he was also a Jersey State Trooper. For those of you who don't know my dad, he did his 25 years and he's just a remarkable person, which I can get into a little bit more about that. Another cool perspective that I can kind of bring is I literally grew up with the greats. I would go to tournaments, 5 years old. I'd see Travis Bates and I'd be like, Travis! I'd go, he'd give me a big ass hug, same thing with Mike Aiello and Brajing, Karan Bath, Christian Binney, Tim Bresnan, Mike Solaris. I was 8 years old and called him Mike Siliaris, that's something that's really cool that I
Yeah.
can kind of bring. Not a lot of people, they see him on TV, they're like, oh my God, it's Travis Beach, and
Yeah.
oh my God, it's Mike Aiello.
I'm
Like,
jealous. They never hug
yeah,
me.
I know, but that's because you're the worst arm wrestler on the planet. But
They know.
no, but it's just really cool. So I'd be more than happy to tell kind of, the story of Team New Jersey since I was immersed in it my whole life. So, Team New Jersey, for all of you newbies out there who are just getting into the sport, this team has always been something special. It was founded by, Mike Mignona and Harry O'Neill back in 1981.
Wow.
Yes, for real, 1981. They're one of the oldest, if not the oldest team in the United States arm wrestling history, unless if there were
Well,
others that we don't know about it. What, Josh?
definitely the longest active team.
Correct. Yeah, longest active team.
Yeah.
Yeah, first family style team. That's something my father always said and Steve Carbone said. So my dad started arm wrestling in 1998, and he went to Dad's bar. That's the significance of Dad's bar. And I'll never forget him telling me this story. So, he was a jacked up trooper. Like my dad was a freaking hellion, right? Like he was just that age. Let's see, he was 31 at the time. And he's all jacked up. He's a typical trooper triangle. He had no legs, which we always made fun of him for. And
Huge
he
shoulders.
was, oh yeah, huge shoulders. His chest right before he passed was 62 inches. I'll get into later. He was just a wrecking of life. And he was whooping everybody's ass in that tournament. All of a sudden, this skinny kid from West Virginia came up, and he was like, I'm gonna whoop this guy. He's so tiny. He's got nothing on me. Dude smoked him. And who is this lovely person? No one but the amazing Travis Bajan.
Oh, wow.
Travis, he's a huge personality, wonderful arm wrestler. And honestly, he's a really cool dude once you get to know him. I know I would always go and hang out with him at tournaments when I was younger, and just always someone to talk to. Just a really cool, down to earth dude from West Virginia. So, and his awesome accent. But so yeah, my dad went up to Mike Mignona at the time because Mike was talking to him, seeing if he was interested. And my dad's like, all right, pretty strong. I'm a pretty strong dude. I can do this, yada, yada, yada. I'm like, there's a reason that skinny kid beat me. There's a freaking trick to this, and I need to know what it is because I am very pissed off that a skinny kid beat me. And that was when Dad got hooked in arm wrestling. And actually, he just told me that story we were talking about it about 2 months ago. Well, 2 months before he passed. So like November. So that was the reason Dad got into arm wrestling. At about 2000, early 2001, Mike Mignona, I believe he had an injury. Yeah, he had a bicep injury. And he told my dad, and this was another conversation that my dad and I had recently. I was asking about the history of Team New Jersey. And he told my dad, he was like, Jim, please don't let what I built go to waste or let it go downhill. This is a legacy that, I've spent 10, 20 years of my life building. I need you to take it over. And that's when my dad took over Team New Jersey. And there was never really, he never saw himself as a team captain. Everybody just kind of appointed him to that because he was coach. It was just coach. So yeah, that is the history of Team New Jersey, like how it started and where it evolved to. For over 20 years, my dad and my mom, just letting you all know, if I get emotional, I apologize. Um, they opened their doors to people. Didn't matter who you were. Everybody was welcome. We've had people live with us um, for a month or two to get them back up on their feet. I'll never forget one gentleman. He was in a real bad way, and my dad took time to sit down and talk to him. And my dad, actually, when he passed, he told me he wouldn't be anywhere he was today without him. He's a very accomplished man in the military. His son's doing phenomenal. He got married at a beautiful destination wedding. And my dad helped him buy a Cadillac, with negotiating and all that. So the history of Team New Jersey, it's not just an arm wrestling team. If you get anything out of this podcast, the sport of arm wrestling it's a family. It's not this, oh, yeah, I do this. You go to a bar tournament, you pool, and you go home. The best part of these tournaments and the best parts of going to nationals and going to worlds was the after party. Because like my dad would say, you can want to rip someone's head off on the table. Prime example, him and Frank Hurst. Oh God, they go back and forth all the time, man.
Mm-hmm.
Back and forth. Actually, one of the things Frank told me when my dad was in the hospital, he's like, he better not fricking go on me. I need to make fun of him still. It's what we did, and I need to make fun of his hair. And they would just rip each other on the table. And then at the after party when it was over, well, I wouldn't because I wasn't obviously 21, but you'd sit back, have a beer, hang out with family. I mean, I remember hanging out and playing with Travis Bajent's, I think it was his oldest son, you were telling me. Yeah, I think Maryland State Championship. Like, it was a family event. My mom would talk to Mrs. Barbosa. Um, the Ayala family is extremely, extremely, extremely wonderful people. Mr. and Mrs. Steve Black. And that's what arm wrestling is really about. It doesn't matter who you are, what you come from. My house in Southampton, New Jersey, and if y'all haven't watched the tribute video that Gary Roberts made of my dad, and you'll see me on crutches because every year I always had something broken. That was the joke. Um, it was a family style. We would have practice, but what people couldn't wait for was those extra literally 5, 6, 7 hours where my dad, we would just he and I would sit down there with him. I remember on Josh's podcast, he was talking, he learned a lot of life lessons from those conversations, and so did I. Um, and it would just be people talking to my dad. He was almost a therapist, and he always said he was the king of the island of misfit toys. That was his big thing. And he was the type of person, a lot of people thought he was super egotistical and all that at first. But once you got to know him, my father, he would take his shirt off his back to give it to someone. That's just the type of person he was. He would go out of his way to help anybody. And that's what arm wrestling's about, that's gotten lost. And that's what's so frustrating to me as somebody who's been here for years. I mean, everybody always said I was, 6 years old going on 30. So I was very intuitive. That's something I miss about arm wrestling because it's not like that anymore. And that's what Team New Jersey, and we'll talk about it a little bit later on, that's what we're trying to get back to. We would go into tournaments and people would be like, holy shit, here comes in Team New Jersey. We'd have our polo shirts on with our duffel bags in our right hand walking in as a team. I'll never forget a lot of AAA nationals. That's Team New Jersey. Then you would have Team Connecticut, Team New York, all that with Ron Columba and, Mr. Devio, Norm Devio would always be there, and talk about an awesome person. I don't know how old the man is, but he is just a frickin' force. He is so cool.
As Jim would say, he's about 187 years old.
Yes, 187 years old.
Yeah.
He was there during the Civil War. So that was always, but that's the true meaning of arm wrestling. It's the sport is awesome, but that's what makes us different than other sports and what kind of Josh hit on. I'll never forget this. My dad would always, when people would say, what are arm wrestlers like? Josh hit on this in his interview. You walk into an expo, you have your power lifters there that are using like the smelling salts and they're grunting and they're getting pepped up. Then you have your bodybuilders that are lathering up in the oils and are all tan and shit. You have your MMA fighters that are like, hit me in the head with a shovel, like just those types of people. And then you would have your arm wrestlers having a good old frickin' time. And if it was after a tournament, we'd always sit and having a drink, catching up and just busting chops on everyone and seeing how everyone's family's doing. See, everybody always knew their family. They always knew what we were up to. You know what I mean? And that's the arm wrestling that I miss. And that's what I want to get back, because a lot of the new people that are coming into this sport watching Game of Arbs, or if you've ever watched the Canadian rendition called Game of Tears, I highly recommend. It is freaking hysterical. I think it's on YouTube. It's so funny. That's what I want to get back so y'all can experience that, because that was an experience in itself.
Well, I mean, we kind of touched on it, but there's been a lot of talks from us within Team New Jersey, and then people outside of Team New Jersey wondering what's going to happen with us, and where are we going to go? So maybe let's touch on that a little bit. I think people need to hear, we're not going anywhere, and it's
No.
it's another chapter. We're going to do it right.
Yeah, as my dad would say, we're going to come back bigger, better, and stronger to carry on his legacy. I know a lot of you don't know me. I was very surprised when Josh said I wasn't just going to be talking about my father, I was going to be talking about myself as well. So we can get into that a little bit later. But there is going to be a group of 5 of us. It's going to be Josh Minicore, Steve Carbone, Steve Walker, who is another older great, well, I say older, he was my dad's age, obviously, but one of the veteran arm wrestlers. Huh? Yeah, younger. Yeah, that's because you're old as dirt, Steve. So myself, Josh, Steve Carbone, Steve Walker, and then Mike McNona. So we're gonna be kind of like a board for Team New Jersey, just so then we each bring a piece of my dad to the table. No one person can do this by themselves. Steve McNona, well, both Steves and McNona, they bring the veteran, they bring strength, and they bring what it was like in Old Realm. Josh and I, which if you don't know Josh and I don't introduce him as an arm wrestler. I introduce him as my brother. I've known Josh for 17 years, Josh? No,
Yeah.
I lied. Yeah, 17 years.
I've known you longer than I've been without you. So
yeah, my dad, we literally call he's my dad's son. My mom would call him and introduce him as their adopted son. We bring the technical. A lot of the older arm wrestlers. I'm looking at you, Mike Solaris. I have my dad's eye. When it's reffing on the table or going over technique. Josh was very analytical growing up, always looking at tape. And then I'm very fortunate to have what my dad had before he passed. Actually, about a month before, the game plan was for me to get back into it because I had taken a break with going to veterinary school and buying a house and all that. So that was the plan. I was supposed to start back up. And he was working on this new move, and I'll never forget, even growing up, he would come in my room and wake me up in the middle of the night and be like, Kalyn, get up. I'm like, Dad, what? He's like, I need you. I'm like, okay. And we would go downstairs and we would just go over moves, or it was to the point where he could call me up and we could both visualize on the table what he was talking about and hit the different angles and be like, Dad, I don't know about that because you might have this angle pressure that could prevent that from happening. And he was like, all right, well, what about this? And I mean, that was the relationship my father and I had. You guys can tell me, I think it was one of a kind. I was telling Josh, I don't think there's any kids of arm wrestlers that I at least know of. There absolutely can be. I know the only one when I was younger was Corey Bresnan with Mr. Tim's son. He was kind of going into the sport, and taking it with the level of passion. So that's something that's very special to me, and that's something it takes all 5 of us to be able to continue my father's legacy, because he was just an amazing, amazing person and coach and dad and husband.
Yeah, I mean, the one plan with the memorial tournament for Jim, I mean, that's something I'd like to touch on.
Yeah, sorry.
No,
Got on my rant. Sorry, I'm off my soapbox.
It's just funny, like when everything you're saying, like with Jim's technique and all. I remember, like, anytime I would travel like to a tournament without him there, I'd hear his voice in my head, like playing my technique, like it was like on like a game controller. Like, you're gonna do A to B to C to, you know what I mean? And it's just gonna work.
My dad always said arm wrestling, and actually I think it was John Anthony, whoever was the other co-host on the TV, he hit it right on the head. Arm wrestling is like chess. In a matter of 10 seconds, you can have one move with 3 different counters. It's all about feeling the different pressure spots, going way back old school. I'll kind of break it down for some of the newer people who might not be as technical in the sport. If you have a competitor who's strong in a hook, right? You post back, you're going to be able to roll their hand out. that's a counter to, let's say, a hook. You can correct me if I'm wrong, Gene or Josh. Something simple like that. You can have a matter, and especially with a lot of these pros that you guys watch, you can have 5 or 6 different sequences of that within 5-10 seconds. Like, it's freaking awesome. It is such an evolving sport. And I mean, I know people in foreign countries. I've talked to Sarah Bachman. I'll never forget. She was one of my idols growing up. I met her in Italy. Very, very blessed to have been able to meet people like that and talk to people. And I'll never forget a lot of the guys when I was in Italy with my parents for Worlds. They would be like, "Holy shit, you have a huge hand." I'm like, "Yeah, I do." And I mean, it's come in handy. I call it a man hand. I think I have bigger hands than Josh, but that's not saying much.
But
But
everybody
yeah.
does.
Yeah,
I
everybody
have bigger
does.
hands than Jimmy Aiello, so it's okay.
Yes. Oh gosh, Jimmy, I was talking to him yesterday. But yeah, that's what's really cool. And this Jim Bryan Classic, we're going to get back to the roots of arm wrestling. We're gonna get back to having a real tournament. And I'm sorry, some of you might get pissed, not having all these bullshit little tournaments where nobody shows up. You know what I mean? That doesn't mean shit. I'm not gonna go pull at a tournament when nobody's there. If I win first place, it doesn't mean anything.
Right.
You got to get back to the nationals or the expo tournaments when you would have a solid at least 15 to 20 competitors in a class. Good competitors. And
Yeah.
a lot of you veteran arm wrestlers, y'all know exactly what I'm talking about. That's the whole point of this tournament, because that's something my dad was passionate about, and he didn't know if it was possible to get arm wrestling back to what it was. Well, I'm making damn sure, and so is the rest of Team New Jersey, we get back to that, because it's really a loss for all the new people that are coming in and have such enthusiasm for the sport and have a love for it. That's something that they're missing, and it's only the right thing to do to be able to bring that back to them, because that was one of the coolest parts of the sport.
Yeah.
Something to train for. You
Yeah,
have
train for
a real event, that you have to make weight, you have to train. It's at a respectable venue, all those things that makes you feel like an athlete, like you're not just training for nothing. Because we put in work like an athlete,
Yeah.
So
Oh, absolutely.
we should feel like it when we're competing.
Yeah.
So, I mean, kind of getting into your life, Kalyn. I mean, there's so much that you've done in arm wrestling, and people don't know that story, but like, I remember when I first started on the team, your mom was competing at that time.
Yeah.
And I mean, anyone doesn't know, I mean, Brenda
Monster.
she was really good, and but and then it was one of those things like, all right, well, there was you and Casey, and it's like, somebody's got to step up and
Steve
keep
Carbone,
going.
everybody.
He just ruined our whole podcast.
That's it. Soiled it. My crazy uncle soiled it.
Oh.
But go ahead. Sorry, Josh.
No, like I was saying, it was like you and Casey, and obviously you took that kind of interest in it, like early on, and you were always there. You know what I mean? Like with me, and you just saw it. You had that eye for it, and
yeah,
like.
Can I show a picture that is a prime example of that?
Yeah,
Let me get back to it.
Yeah.
That was my dad and I in Italy World Championship 2009.
That's awesome.
Yeah. Do you want me to dabble in my dad's history and accolades first, and then kind of roll into mine and transition?
Yeah, let's go. Let's start there.
For those of you that don't know and have never seen the Jim Bryan Shrine, I have a list. It does not include everything. And if he didn't like the trophy, he would throw it out. He's had several, I think he has, I checked, 3 first place trophies from high ranking tournaments that he thought were ugly and are currently in our sub pump closet. So these are only the nice trophies, and I'd be more than happy to post pictures of it as well. I'm very proud of it.
You ran out of space.
Huh?
He cut the wall a little too small and he ran out of space.
Right, he did. Do you remember the really ugly bald eagle trophy? Yes. I don't know what tournament it was. Oh my God, he hated that so much. He was like, this is a disgrace. But alrighty. So my dad has won several Can-Am tournaments. For a lot of you newbies who don't know, Can-Ams are Canadian American arm wrestling tournaments. He's been to show his strength. He had several AAA national titles under his belt. various fairs and state championships. He has Mohican Sung championships under his belt. He refereed and I believed placed first or second in a few wall tournaments. Could be wrong on that note, but I know he dabbled in that as well. The big one is in 2000. Well, he's arm wrestled in several states. That was a lot of our family vacations. We've been to Ohio, Florida, Massachusetts, New York, New Jersey, Connecticut, Virginia, Maryland, Indiana. Well, yeah, he went to Indiana. I didn't go to Indiana. He went to Arkansas. A lot of different states he's arm wrestled in, but he's also qualified for several world championships. And to me, a world championship is something you qualify for. It's not something you just go to. You got to earn it. Some of you might disagree with me, but call me old school. I'm a straight shooter like my father. It is what it is. So he qualified for in 2001. He went to Egypt for the world championship. A few awesome people that went. James Battles, another really good dude. I can't think of some of the other poolers that went for Egypt. 03, he went to Brazil. I think my father and my mother had a little bit too much fun in Brazil. They said that was definitely a fun time. I'll have to share one of my favorite photos of him from that is with Steve Carbone. Steve Carbone is a awesome pooler. I literally am not kidding when I called him my crazy uncle. They had a lot of fun in arm wrestling together. That was probably my dad's best friend in arm wrestling. They grew in the sport, and that was always a consistent person. So yeah, Brazil in 03, 2005. He was in Japan, October in Japan. That's when he won right and left in the 209 weight class world championships. I believe he was the first American. He might have been one of the first Americans to win both right and left hand at the same worlds. The 209s, that was probably the most competitive weight class back then. And again, that might, I know he was definitely at least one of the first, if not the first. So I just want to, make sure I'm correct on that. But in that tournament, it's not like he went straight with the wins. He actually came back. I believe it was right hand. He came back and fought through the losers bracket and won. There's some pretty cool tapes, and my favorite is I actually have the picture I sent Ryan of his 2 world championship medals. He was extremely proud of that. Another really cool accolade that I don't even think they're doing them anymore since AAA's kind of fizzled out. Arm Wrestler of the Year. That's something that people strove to get. That was a huge accolade to win. My dad won Arm Wrestler of the Year for all of America, back in 2006, the year after he won Worlds. And to be Arm Wrestler of the Year, it's not just you have to be one of the best in arm wrestling, but it took in everything to consideration, how you were as a coach, how you were as a, competitor. My dad was also a referee. He was one of the best. No, actually, scratch that. He was the best referee. If anybody would like to argue with me on that, I welcome it. You can ask everybody, Travis Bajent, Latimer, Sean Latimer, Mike Aiello. Whenever there's a big tournament, or even Marcio Barbosa, whenever he ran his tournaments, my dad and I were the people he called. If you talk to any veteran, my dad was one, because he wouldn't let any shit happen. He knew what to look for. He would laugh when people would try to cheat, and he was honest. He wasn't gonna, side on anyone. He was a straight shooter because he wanted a clean, fair fight. That's just how he was. So he's had several, and even WAL, he was a referee for that as well. Him and my mom ran brackets, and he was a ref. So that was kind of the tag team. Am I missing anything, Skip? Josh's nickname is Skippy of Weinstein. That was the first nickname Dad ever gave him. Yeah. Fun fact.
Always appreciated.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, and obviously Worlds in Italy.
Yeah. So, yes. I forgot about that. 2009 Worlds in Italy when you went with us.
Yep, where I got to compete with Jim and my dad.
Yeah. That was a great trip. Like I said, Josh, he's on another arm wrestler. He's literally my brother. We did the tournament for the first, I think, 4 or 5 days was a tournament. Then we traveled Italy together. A lot of fun memories. The after party, Josh had a little bit too much fun, and we were going to Pisa the next day, and he fell asleep on the step while waiting for the taxi cab. He fell asleep.
This interview is not about me, guys.
Oh no, I have to. He fell asleep on the train to Pisa, so my dad and I and my
this is
sister were
great.
like rolling up like straws, and his mouth was open when he was snoring, and we were throwing them in his like mouth for like points. It was hilarious.
Yeah,
A lot of good times.
Yeah,
This is good stuff.
Oh yeah.
I don't know how many other people fell asleep on the steps of the Leaning Tower of Pisa. I don't remember that city at all.
Just the right angle.
Yeah,
just
the
the right angle.
Yeah.
I'm right here. This
Yeah.
little
But that's what's cool. And even like during Worlds or during AAA Nationals, like you have a huge after party, and that's where people would have fun on the table, and and even my dad, they would be like, he would help anybody, be like, hey, if you want it, I'd be more than happy to kind of tell you how you can beat that guy, or where you went wrong. And there's hundreds of people between coming to our house. Dave Morocco, he would come to our house gearing up for a challenge match. Mike Solaris, Mike Aiello, Angel, old New York pooler, Bresnan, Christian Benny, Todd Zilla. Yeah, that's Todd Hutchins' nickname, right? Yeah, Todd Hutchins. There's been a lot of greats that have gone through our basement, and that's only some. I think even Marcio might have come once, I believe. Yeah, Marcio's been there a few times.
I remember Jim would always like help like people that would even in his class.
Oh yeah, because he wanted to get better.
I'll make them better, so it makes me better. Because
exactly.
I don't want to win by a trick. I want to win because I'm just that much better.
Yeah, he was always one to help anybody to raise the gold standard. Arm wrestling is a cool sport, and if you can go out and help someone, that's what it's all about. You don't want to win with mediocres. You don't want to win with a bunch of newbies. You don't want to, you want to push yourself. And that was always one of the things that a lot of us talked about, amateur poolers, novice classes. You would have people tournament after tournament after tournament winning these novice tournaments or novice classes, but they wouldn't go up to pro because they were scared to lose. That's how you get better. That's how you push yourself. The sport, it's not about losing. It's about growing and developing and coming up with new moves and pushing yourself and pushing your teammates. That's what the sport's about. I mean, it's an individual sport in a sense, but you're going to have buddies. You're going to have teammates, especially with how many like teams there are now. That's what it's about. Yeah. That's what we got to get back to. If we can get back to that, we're going to see a bunch of people rise into the top. We're going to see a bunch of people developing and starting to get more of a higher competitive rate, if that makes sense.
Kalyn, you have triggered a lot of people on this episode, and I'm proud of you for it.
What do you mean triggered?
made people upset.
Come at me.
By telling them the truth.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
That's what we want. That's what we want.
Besides veterans, I'm sorry, y'all haven't been in the sport long enough. I'm just not trying to be a bitch. I mean, I am from Jersey, so that's one thing, but I'm just trying to shed light on what we got to get back to, because the only way a lot of these new people and even veterans are going to improve is by pushing themselves. Like you're not going to train as hard if you lose. If you win, you're not going to develop new moves. The beauty of arm wrestling, and only very few amount of people can actually create new moves, new technique, way back when you had your back pressure, your post pressure, that was about it. Then you're hooking your top roll. Now you have angle away. You have this angle away. The itsy bitsy spider was one of my dad's techniques. Johnny, what's his last name? Ships? I can't pronounce his name. Johnny Blades. He actually sent me a really nice Facebook Messenger when I think I've met him once or twice. He sent me the nicest Facebook message when my dad passed, and he said, I owe a lot of what I know to your dad. He taught me itsy bitsy spider, locking out, read a book. All of that technique, it grows, it evolves. People can master it, and then the trick is, all right, what's next? I got to try to think of the move my dad was just working on. That's the beauty of arm wrestling. It's never the same. It's going to constantly evolve, and that's what's exciting about it. That's what new people and everybody should get excited with. Yeah. It's not football. I love football. It's never going to change. Same sport, same rules.
Yeah.
Except you can't hit the quarterback as hard now. Arm wrestling's different like that. It's like boxing. It's like, all these other, it is constantly evolving.
I'm hoping your adoptive brother here teaches me some of these things.
Oh, I got you, Ryan. I'm getting back into it. I got you.
I'll just cut him out of the middle and come
That's
directly
what like
to the
sucks for me
source.
is I'm not like super well, I mean, I'm strong for a woman, I guess, but
Yeah.
I'm not as strong as let's say men, but it's so frustrating to me, and Josh knows this because I vented to him. I can out technique. I will say a lot of competitors. I can out technique, and I was looking at several different tape, and being able to dissect where someone just an adjustment of your elbow, not separating, waiting, holding, the finger position, finger pressures. You can see the pressure on somebody by the color of their fingers. Different angles that they're prepping, where their shoulders placed, where their legs are placed, if there's cores engaged or not. There's so much that goes into it, and that's one of the really frustrating things, especially if other people understand like you're not quite at your strength yet, but the technique's there. It's so frustrating. But what drives you to get better, so then you can replicate those moves. You can execute that technique. Be like, yeah, this is what I was talking about.
Right.
That's what's so cool about it. I'm really excited to get back in the sport.
That's where I'm at. Like, Josh will teach me something, but I'm not strong enough to do it yet to other people. You know what I mean?
But that's what's cool about it.
Yeah. Because then it makes you want to get stronger to be able to do those things.
Yeah. Well, I remember Jim always said, one day you'll get your man strength. And I'm still waiting for it. So
my legs were my man strength, my squat and stuff. I mean, my bench was good, 215. I could bicep curl like 65, 70. But when I believe I was working with Dad, I think it was those numbers. I can't recall. He just always said I sucked no matter what, just to get me pissed.
He just put heavier weight in your hand and told you don't have a choice.
Yeah, he was like, suck it up, don't cry, you're doing it. I'm like, thanks, Dad, I appreciate it. But Sue Fisher's another one who's really underrated. She's a phenomenal pooler. I trained a lot with Sue.
She's a sweetheart.
She's a wonderful person. She's a badass. She is a badass. She's awesome with her platform shoes and her hair. She's so freaking cool. She's been with Team New Jersey. She was with the team for years. She's awesome. But do you guys want me to go into a little bit of my accolades of why people should kind of maybe sort of listen to me, or like, who the hell is this lady saying that?
Well, yeah, I mean, like, let's start with like your first experience, like on the table, like when you started
on the table.
Yeah, when you started arm wrestling, like
for real, like actual practicing,
actually coming to practice for real. Because I remember those days when like it was like, all right, now it's time. She's getting on the table.
Yeah, 2013. I was training for Sue Fisher's tournaments, the PA Winter Blast. I was 16. I think I got third, but I wasn't lifting then. I just kind of was technique driven, and I was very nervous on the table and all that. So that was like the first actual tournament that I did.
I remember how scared Jim was because
you don't want me to break my arm because I would. It was the
accident prone with everything.
Guys, I've broken 17 bones, 2 bad concussions, like literally stupid shit. Like I fell off my swing set and broke my arm. Like I walked around 5 years on a completely broken shin bone. Like I was just the stupid one, I guess. But yeah, so 2013 is when I started. 2015, I'm gonna say, was like my real debut, my senior year of high school. I placed in Marcio Barbosa's tournament. I actually qualified to go to Arnold's with my dad. I can post some of those pictures, but I'm going to be completely honest. Yes, I've competed. I never took competing as seriously. Well, like I did, but what I knew I was phenomenal at, like I knew I can eventually be a great pooler like my dad. I know I can still be. That's why I'm getting back into the sport, training hard, all of that. Refereeing. That's my dad and I were known as the Bryan team. He would head ref, I would down ref. If we had 2 tables running, we would both head ref. Him and we officiated the police and firemen Olympics down in Fairfax, Virginia. And I was literally 17 years old. You can see a lot of the videos. I really had to command my respect on the table because people are like, who the hell is this little girl? Like, what the hell does she know? Well, they took me very seriously when I would elbow foul them twice and be like, you elbow fouled. Do not look at me like that. So, and everybody would kind of laugh.
A lot of times.
Yeah, Mike Solaris. I was 8 years old and we were doing a little tournament at my house, and I, elbow fouled him. He's like, Jesus Christ, if she refs, I'm not going to a tournament. But another really good dude as well. The Solaris family are really nice people. But that's what it came down to, is I wanted to be able to make an impact. And that's where my dad was like, because I wasn't sure of myself. I'm like, Dad, they're not going to respect me. Like, I'm a woman, number one. It's hard enough for women in the sport. And number two, I'm young. And he's like, Kalyn, you're a Bryan. Number one, number two, you're my daughter. And number three, it runs in your blood. You know what you're doing. You need to get over that. And I did. And that's when people started saying I've been doing a hell of a job refereeing. And, my dad would tell me how proud he was of me and let it be known if I effed up on anything, he would let me hear it. So he would not sugarcoat me because I was his daughter. He was always, that was the relationship we had. Arm wrestling is a love that we had. He was the coolest person. And for you newbies, I remember, I think I was talking to Josh. People were amazed by, his dad and Frank Hurst when they were training or something not too long ago. And Josh and I were talking, we're like, they would lose their shit if they saw them back, 10 years ago. Frank Hurst is an amazing person. I love him to death. He always had bright blue eyes. My dad would say he wore contacts, and I would be like, "What do you mean? Like, his eyes are beautiful." It's funny, but you're laughing. You remember that I think you wore the contacts, but yeah, but that's what is so cool about it, and what's amazing is this is something you can have a bond with people with, and I'm very blessed to know my dad, and hundreds of people are blessed to have had any experience with him, because his passion for the sport, he didn't do it for the money, he didn't do it for accolades. Well, I mean, you always do it. If you don't win, what's the point? You don't go just to participate. That's always been the Bryan rule: go big or go home. But his passion for the sport was one of very few. He loved the sport, but it didn't consume him. He won everything while he was still, a state trooper. This was just his passion. But it was something he ignited so many people with the passion of the sport. Ben Morano, Brian Bellwood, two really, really great dudes. I remember when they first started coming to the house, and now they're all ripped up and strong, and they're great people. I remember Joe Galacci coming, Sean Latimer. I remember when he first came. There's just a lot of awesome people that I have seen. Josh, he's a huge accolade, he's a huge supporter of the sport, and his passion, it reminds me of my dad. And that's what he was known for. Sorry. Still a little raw, but that's what he brought to the table for the sport, his passion about it. And not many people have that. A lot of people want the money. A lot of people want the fame. My dad didn't give a shit about that. If it came, it came. I mean, he had a TV show, Call to Arms, Collegiate Arm Wrestling League. Frank Hurst helped him with it. That was his passion, was getting arm wrestling known to people who don't know about it, because it is just such a freaking awesome sport. And that was his goal in life, to be good at it, number one, and to share his excitement with people.
And it was great when he was the first person somebody met that was an arm wrestler, because he would make the sport look real good.
Yeah, you were never a crash dummy at our house. My dad, if anybody had that, they would have a very stern talking to, because that's not what Team New Jersey's about. Team New Jersey is about growing and learning and giving people the opportunity to learn the technique, to get strength where you don't have to worry about being egotistical. You don't have to worry about sorry, I'm holding my arm wrestling necklace. You don't have to worry about getting injured. You don't have to worry about losing. It was a learning environment, and that's what he took pride in, because there's not many practices, especially when way back 20 years ago, there was not many practices that you could go and almost have a safe space in a sense.
Yeah, as we called it, like man therapy.
Therapy. Yep, he called himself the king of the island of misfit toys. I mean, there was times I'll never forget. We had 36 people in the basement, and my mom would just be there, and it was a thing that we all did. Like, my mom would go down and talk to people. Like, people would bring their wives and kids to practice. New Year's Eve, we would have a huge ass party. That was That was my dad's and my favorite holiday and my sister. Everybody knew that was his holiday, and he had to go on that day. I'm like, you son of a bitch. My dad was always one for the theatrics.
And then the best was Team New Jersey Arm Wrestler of the Year.
Yep, I was just gonna get to that. We would have over 100 people there pulling on New Year's, and then we'd have Arm Wrestler of the Year for Team New Jersey. And then we would have a cookout for 4th of July, and everybody would come. People would drive hours, like upstate New York, Connecticut. Frank Hurst has been to my house several times, you know. Just a lot of good memories. And if anybody has pictures or stories, please send them, because those are the stories we need to pass on about my dad and carry his legacy.
That's what I do.
Yeah.
Now, I put it out on Facebook that you were coming on, and we have a few people that wanted to ask you some questions. So I think I'll let Ryan ask those questions to you.
All right.
All right. Question number 1 from Wayne Kiefer. What was your most memorable arm wrestling moment with your dad?
Oh, most memorable arm wrestling moment. I'm going to give 2. One was going to Worlds and him in Italy in 2009. I remember the picture I showed with me and him standing there side by side, and that weekend, well, 4 days was just extremely memorable. But him winning his few matches, that was extremely memorable. And then him and I officiating the police and firemen World Olympics in Fairfax. Mike Aiello was there, Travis Bagent was there. Those are really good memories.
Did Mike have his shirt on or off?
No, Jim Tan Mike had his shirt on. So that's what Dad always called him.
Nice.
But another real good dude. Really good dude.
Sure.
Don't mean to interrupt. I was just talking to Casey, and she remembers at Worlds that she was giving all of Team USA massages on their arms.
Yes, she was.
She was the massage therapist for Team USA.
Yes, she was.
How old was she at the time? Well,
I was in 7th grade. So she was in 4th grade.
4th grade, like 9 years old.
Yeah.
Wow. And, it was great.
Thank God for puberty. I'm looking back at those pictures. I'm like, holy crap.
Yeah, another one from Wayne. Top 3 favorite pullers besides Jim.
Marcio Barbosa. Hell of a man on and off the table. Just a real class act guy. Phenomenal puller. Christian Benny. I love him so much. He is just an awesome person, and he was a real badass. Still is a real badass to this day, but back in the day, just a fun person to be around. 3rd. I don't want to say Josh because he's my brother, so I'm always partial. I'm trying to think people off of Team New Jersey.
Yeah, no one else likes him anyway.
Nobody likes Josh. That's what Dad would say. Nobody likes you. Probably Dave Morocco. Yeah, Dave Morocco.
Nice.
That was one of my favorite tournaments that I ran with him. Well, I didn't run it, but I went to. That was my first year in college. I pulled against Lexi Maxwell, and she's awesome. Super, super good puller. And I know she's been training. I don't know if she's still in it now, her and her dad, but really nice people too. And we had slipped, and we went in the straps. And for those of you who don't know, the straps was my father's shit. Oh God. If I can give any newbie a piece of advice, don't lollygag getting up to the table, get up to the side where the opponent's going to have the strap, the strap buckle. That was always one of the biggest techniques. So there you go. If I triggered people, you're welcome. Biggest piece of advice. But yeah, we went in the straps, and I'll never forget, I beat Lexi. It was a pretty good pull. It was a good match. I don't know if you remember that, Josh.
Oh yeah, I do. Yeah, it was at the CrossFit. Yeah.
Yeah. It was a good match, and I ended up beating her. And I was talking to my dad afterward, and he said, "Honey, I have never seen such perfect execution in straps." That was also a really great moment. But yeah, Dave Morocco, really solid guy on and off the table. I remember he would come to practice and be like, "Dave, I know I'm young, but you gotta listen to me. You gotta do this." And Dave's like, Jim, what do you think? And my dad would be like, Dave, she's right. You know, like he's just all. I think he was prepping for a challenge match, is what it was. Yeah, Max Maxwell. I'm like, Dave. No, excuse me. I was like, Mr. Morocco. I'm like, this is what you got to do. You got to move your elbow here, and you got to lock it out. And he's like, what do you mean? And I showed him, and I looked at my dad. I'm like, am I explaining that properly? He's like, yes, you are. But yeah, and Dave will probably laugh at that. But yeah, those are probably my top 3.
I remember he didn't do what he was instructed to do, and he lost that match.
Yes, and I was very upset with Dave.
Yeah,
I was heartbroken.
Yeah, you were mad.
I was very mad. I was like, Dave, what are you doing? But yeah, another good dude. He was so excited because we were all supposed to move, because I'm in Maryland now, and we were all supposed to move closer to him, like my parents, my grandparents, my sister, and my fiance and I. And he was so excited to have my dad closer and me closer to him. It was something we were talking about. But yeah, he's another veteran. He's an awesome guy.
Yeah, he throws some pretty epic practices too.
Yes, he does.
Yeah.
And I told Dave, I'm like, Dave, be careful with COVID. And he did. You know, but yeah, if you can ever make it down there, he is just a class act guy.
Yeah.
He really is. He might seem over the top on Facebook.
Yeah.
Trust me, I've gotten in a couple arguments with him where I call and be like, why did you say this? You know what I mean? And
or his recent boxing match.
Yeah, he's very passionate. But that was always one of him and my dad's. I'd be like, Dad, did you see what Morocco posted? He was like, yes, I already talked to him. We're good. I'm like, okay. You know, he's a very passionate guy, but he is just such a down-to-earth, another awesome person.
What do you think your dad would have said about his boxing match with Barry Bourne?
Dude, he's probably, my dad's cremated, but you know, the term, he's probably rolling in his grave,
over,
dude.
What
oh
the
my
hell?
God.
Yeah.
Being like, what has this come to?
Oh man, poor Dave.
Yeah, oh, Dave. He's awesome.
And Keith Howley asks, who was your toughest opponent?
Deb Banyan. I lost to her at Atlantic City Expo. I got second or third because there was another crazy bodybuilder chick or something. And I almost had her, and I separated too much. You know, good arm wrestling technique, you know, staying close, don't separate, don't lean back because it's only going to hurt you in the long run. That I separated a little bit too much, and I was still kicking myself to this day. And Deb Banyan, yeah, she's a really good pooler. I learned a lot from analyzing that match. And what was really frustrating, she's super strong, very strong woman. And I'm like, damn, if I would have just had a little bit more strength, I could have used this pressure here and this pressure here. And I think it would have been the turn, because I gave her a good fight. It wasn't like a flash match. None of my matches were flash matches. But yeah, she's a really good competitor. One of the few women I've got in the pool that's actually a big name. So yeah, no, Deb Banyan, definitely.
That's cool. And
also very, very nice. She was like, honey, you did a hell of a job. I'll never forget that conversation. I was like, well, thank you very much, Miss Deb. I appreciate it.
I'm sure that feels good. Yeah.
Yeah. Yep.
Jacob Bevel would like to know if you're interested in reffing sometime in the near future.
Oh, absolutely. I would love to. That would mean the world to me.
Nice.
Because that's something I want to do. I already told James, sorry, I keep saying James. I already told Josh that for the Jim Bryan Classic, I would be honored to ref.
That'd be awesome.
Yeah, then I'll probably pool women's. So.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
I'm trying to convince Josh to start competing again.
Got to give him something to train for.
I know.
Exactly. These little
that's
bars.
why we all got stagnant.
Yeah.
You know, we're
right.
like, no one's going to show up. You know, no offense to any of the newer people or anything.
Oh, feel free to offend them.
I'm not like my sister. I'll be a little bit sugar-coated. She's an amazing person, by the way. She's awesome.
We'll interview her next.
Oh, God. You better brace yourself. She'll make you cry.
Oh, boy.
She's awesome. She's cool.
That would be awesome if she made Josh cry on our podcast.
Not Josh.
We could bring someone on that we could have her make cry.
I could definitely throw a couple of people to the wolves like that.
Yeah,
I would love to be a part of that.
Don't give them any warning and be like, "Hey, do you want to be on with her?" And just let her like slam into them. That'd be great. Yeah. So our next game segment is the rapid fire questions.
I'm really scared about this.
Just don't think about it and just blurt out the first thing that comes to mind.
Oh God.
Don't worry, it's nothing too
Josh,
crazy.
if you
Nothing
make
too
me look
crazy.
like an ass, I'm gonna kill you.
Oh,
It's nothing too crazy.
no.
Plus, only I make people look like an ass.
Okay.
He always
I
tells me
haven't
not to.
quite met you yet, so I'll give you a chance.
Yeah. We kept it mild.
Okay, good.
Yeah. All right. First question: hook, top roll, press, or other?
Other.
King's move, yes or no?
No.
Table time or weights?
Table time.
Pizza or steak?
Steak.
Favorite training tool or handle?
Rolling Thunder.
Cardio, yes or no?
Hell no.
Threw that in for you.
Super match or tournament format?
Tournament.
Charge $5 at practice, yes or no?
No.
Horses or dogs?
Huh?
Horses or dogs?
Oh, you son of a bitch. Horses.
Okay. That was it for that. That's it for that.
Okay.
Josh came up with the horses or dogs because he knew it would be a tough decision for you.
Yeah, you left out cattle. That's another good one.
Yeah, I didn't have 3 options in my head. I just had 2.
You did good though. That was good.
Cool.
No
Yeah.
No long awkward pauses there.
Yeah, exactly. Now, I mean, any last things you want to say? Any plans for the future that you want to talk about?
First off, I just want to thank you guys for letting me come on here and share my story and my
we're
dad's
honored.
story.
Yeah. It's our pleasure.
Yeah.
We're very honored.
My dad's a legend in arm wrestling. I mean, you can ask any of
Absolutely.
the big name veteran pullers, you know, Travis Bajent, Marcio Barbosa, Mike Aiello, Brzezinski, Ron Bath.
Yeah.
You know, all of them. Marcio actually had the nicest Facebook post about my dad, and it was a picture of the 3 of us at one of his tournaments. That really meant a lot.
That's cool.
But future with me, y'all are going to be seeing me coming in hot and heavy.
Nice.
Training up now with Steve and Josh. Gonna rely on my dad with technique. You know I'll think of shit that he would. And then refereeing is like the goal is to get the sport back to what it used to be, because it's not fair that only the veterans and people like me who have been in it for 20 years really know. And yes, I promise I do remember things from when I was like 4 or 5. We were literally talking about tournaments and I was like, yeah, I remember that. I was up in like Massachusetts and it was at this hotel. Steve's like, how the hell do you remember that? I'm like, I don't know, I just do. So I can actually say 20 years. So that's the goal, get it back. It's not fair that we got to experience the even cooler aspects of arm wrestling behind the scenes. So that's what's next. I can't wait to start meeting a lot of you people. There's a lot of newbies on Team New Jersey I got to meet. So I'm excited to have that.
Yeah, and the Jim Bryan Classic, well, it's going to be first the Jim Bryan Memorial Tournament, but I think it's going to turn into a Jim Bryan Classic.
Yep.
It's going to be a pretty epic event.
Goal is for it to be like almost a nationals.
It's going to be something for people to train for again, and people are going to come for this, and we're going to do it right. And by the way, it's not for profit. It's to just host the biggest, baddest event of the year.
For the love of the sport.
Yep, that's all it's about.
That's how it should be.
Yes, it should be.
So, Kalyn, my sister.
My broski.
Yeah. Just want to thank you for coming on.
It was nice meeting you, Ryan. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for coming on.
Oh yeah, if any of you guys have, I'm on the arm wrestling training. I've commented a couple times on some videos, just my questions, well not questions, but my critiques per se. Hey, make sure you're doing it. Life is better
with a positive
risk curl.
Yeah.
Always.
I'll have to have you critique some of my
oh, definitely. I'm an open book.
My rubber band videos.
Oh, you have to see these
my resistance band videos.
No, definitely. I'd be more than happy to help anyone. If y'all wanna, I'm on Facebook, I'm on Instagram. I'd be more than happy to help kind of get the sport back to where it needs to be. So I'll be starting to come to practices.
We'll link to your social media below this on YouTube.
Yeah, it'll be awesome.
I'm
super excited. No stalkers. Just because my father's on.
No weirdos.
No, my fiance is 6'3" and was a center for football 350.
See, you don't want to mess with that.
And I can also throw a punch.
Yeah. You got the whole 98% community behind you too.
Right, yeah. And Josh. He has small hands, but he can kick ass.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm excited to see where the sport's gonna go.
Yeah, absolutely. It's gonna be great.
Yep, I'm very excited.
All right.
Cool. Thank you so much.
98%.